Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Okay, so imagine this, all right? You're just there flipping through channels, right? Or scrolling through social media, maybe even just like walking down the street, and it hits you, like you notice it. This sound, this logo, this certain something that just screams America. It's like it's inescapable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
So today we're really going to dive into this whole idea of American cultural influence, or like some people call it cultural imperialism. And honestly, it's a lot more than just like catchy songs and big budget movies. We're really going to dissect this PDF. We have American cultural imperialism from 20th century popular culture to 21st century AI regulation, and like unpack how American culture really subtly and not so subtly shapes our world. Get ready for some serious aha moments.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how this influence can be so subtle. Like, it's not always super obvious. It's this constant presence that sort of seeps into our lives without us even realizing it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like the PDF starts in the 20th century, right? And you can't deny it. American culture was huge then. Like Hollywood was in its golden age, right?
Wow.
Pumping out films like Casablanca, Gone with the Wind. So it's more than entertainment. It's like exporting a vision of the American dream.
And that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just the glitz and the glamour. These films were subtly exporting values like individualism, the pursuit of happiness, ideas that are like deeply woven into the fabric of American identity.
So it's like they're not just selling a story, they're selling a whole way of life.
Exactly. And those values weren't just confined to the silver screen either.
Right.
Think about like the global reach of American music. Jazz emerged from the African-American experience, but it transcended borders and became like this universal language.
Yeah.
Then you have rock and roll, a revolution fueled by artists like Elvis Presley, challenging social norms, capturing that spirit of rebellion.
Right.
And then hip-hop, born on the streets of New York, and it spreads like wildfire across the world.
It's crazy.
Each genre, with its roots firmly planted in America, went on to influence countless artists, inspire generations.
And it's incredible how those iconic MTV music videos, right, with their flashy visuals and catchy tunes, brought those sounds and styles right into our living rooms, no matter where we were in the world. It's like how many of us grew up trying to dance like Michael Jackson in Thriller?
Oh.
And it wasn't just about mimicking, it was about connecting with that energy, that attitude. But beyond the music, the movies, there's this whole other layer, right? I'm talking about the global dominance of American brands.
Right. The rise of these brands as cultural symbols is a key part of what the PDF is calling cultural imperialism. Coca-Cola, with that iconic red and white logo. It became synonymous with happiness, with refreshment. Levi's jeans started as workwear, transformed into a symbol of rebellion and individuality.
Yeah.
And then there's McDonald's, taking the concept of fast food and making it universally appealing.
It's true, though. It's like they weren't just selling products, they were selling like a piece of the American experience, you know?
Exactly. And that's where the idea of soft power comes in. It's not about forcing a culture onto others, but rather making it so pervasive, so desirable, that it subtly influences your preferences, your aspirations.
It's like you don't even realize it's happening. And then suddenly you're craving a Big Mac and fries while listening to Bruce Springsteen and dreaming of that classic American road trip.
And it goes beyond just consumer goods, too.
Yeah.
The PDF points out things like educational programs, Fulbright scholarships, for example, enabling students from around the globe to study in the U.S., immersing themselves in the culture, bringing back those experiences, or the impact of cultural exchanges, like jazz musicians touring the Soviet Union during the Cold War, fostering connection and understanding through shared artistic experiences. These initiatives, while seemingly benign, contribute to the subtle spread of American values and ideas.
It does make you wonder, though, is this cultural exchange always a bad thing? Or is it just like a natural consequence of globalization, of this interconnectedness? Because it's not like America's the only culture with influence, right?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to really unpack that, we need to move beyond the 20th century and into the digital age, because the rise of the internet and with it social media, that changed the game entirely.
It's like we open this Pandora's box, you know? The internet just explodes, connecting the entire world in ways we never even thought about. And suddenly we're all a click away from like experiencing different cultures, different perspectives. But here's the thing, and it's something this PDF really emphasizes. The internet, it's not exactly a neutral space, you know?
Oh, absolutely not. We can't talk about American cultural influence now in the 21st century without addressing like the giant elephant in the room. Social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, they weren't just for sharing vacation photos or like keeping up with your friends. They became the new public squares, the global stages where culture was being shaped in real time.
And like, who was controlling all of that? Who were the ringmasters of this digital circus? Mostly American companies, right, based out in Silicon Valley, with their fingers on the pulse of what went viral and what just vanished.
Exactly. And this is where the idea of cultural imperialism takes a really fascinating turn. Because it's not just about the content being shared, it's about who has the power to decide what content is even allowed online.
Okay.
Enter the age of content moderation, where these companies are suddenly faced with this monumental task of setting the rules for how people should behave online for billions of users around the world.
Let me get this straight. So you're saying a handful of companies, mostly in the U.S., ended up deciding what was considered acceptable online behavior for everyone. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was a balancing act, for sure. And the PDF points out how often those decisions were driven by this need to avoid controversy or potential legal issues. So they defaulted to American values and sensitivities. Nudity, for example, became heavily restricted on many platforms, mirroring American cultural norms around those topics. Graphic violence faced similar scrutiny with algorithms designed to flag and remove content deemed too extreme. You see?
It's kind of wild when you think about it, how those decisions made in boardrooms thousands of miles away could impact someone's ability to share their art, their stories, their experiences. It's like this invisible hand shaping what's okay to say online.
Exactly. And it's not just about what's taken down. It's also about what people actually get to see. What gets amplified. We're talking algorithms, right? Those lines of code that determine what pops up on our feeds, what recommendations we see, what content even reaches our screens. And those algorithms, often kept secret, don't just appear out of thin air. They're created by people, trained on massive amounts of data. And inevitably, they inherit the biases, the values, the blind spots of their creators.
So even with the best intentions, these algorithms could end up favoring content that aligns with American values and preferences. It's like this subtle undercurrent shaping our online experience without us even knowing.
Right. But it gets even crazier, right? This PDF goes full-on Black Mirror when it starts talking about AI.
Yeah.
That's where those subtle influences become almost impossible to notice. They're woven into the very fabric of how we interact online. Because now it's not just human moderators in Silicon Valley making judgment calls. It's artificial intelligence trained on huge data sets that reflect those pre-existing biases, becoming the enforcers of acceptable online behavior.
Okay, hold on. You're saying AI is making decisions about what I can and can't see, what I can and can't say online. Give me some concrete examples. This is getting a little too out there for me.
Let's take Midjourney, for example.
Yeah.
It's that AI art platform that's been everywhere lately. You know, the one that creates those crazy good visuals just from text prompts?
Right.
Well, the PDF points out that Midjourney, despite how creative it can be, actually has built-in rules against generating anything with nudity or violence. Now, on the surface, that might seem reasonable, but it also brings up concerns about censorship and artistic freedom. Think about it. A painting like Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, celebrated for centuries for its beauty, might be flagged as inappropriate by an AI like Midjourney just because it depicts nudity, even in a classical, non-sexualized context.
Wow. So even our artistic explorations in the digital world are being shaped by these pre-programmed values. That's both fascinating and a little creepy. And it's not just art, is it?
Nope, not at all. Take ChatGPT, for instance. It's that AI chatbot that can create really human-like text in response to prompts. It's super sophisticated. But as the PDF points out, it's also super cautious. Ask it to write something a little edgy, something that pushes the boundaries of what's considered acceptable, and you'll probably be met with resistance. It avoids explicit content, graphic depictions of violence, anything that could be considered too controversial.
It's like we've created these AI systems in our own image, full of our anxieties, our sensitivities, our need to please. It's like we don't want to offend anyone. But as the PDF argues, this brings up some serious questions about cultural imperialism in our digital world.
Right, because it's not about some malicious intent. It's about the unexpected consequences of these really powerful technologies, reflecting and amplifying one set of values, often at the expense of others.
So where does that leave us? Are we just along for the ride in this global digital world? Are experiences curated by algorithms and policed by AI? Or is there some way to push back to ensure we have a more diverse range of voices and perspectives in the digital age?
That's the challenge, isn't it? To recognize the subtle ways cultural influence operates in our interconnected world and to actually talk about it. To have these sometimes difficult conversations about power, about influence, and about the sneaky ways our digital lives are being shaped.
It's like we've exported our own cultural antibodies into this digital world.
Yeah.
These algorithms, these AI systems, they're not just neutral judges of information. They're built with this very American idea of what's okay, what's appropriate, what's even considered safe to see or hear.
And the PDF argues that this goes way beyond just following American laws or regulations.
So it's not just about avoiding lawsuits or government censorship.
Right. It's sneakier than that.
Yeah.
It's about this self-censorship happening globally, driven by this need to not offend the supposed sensitivities of a worldwide market.
So these tech companies trying to avoid controversy and make as much money as possible, they end up unintentionally spreading their own internal sense of right and wrong, a sense that's obviously shaped by their American perspective.
Exactly. It's a kind of cultural imperialism that works behind the scenes. This preemptive silencing of anything that might be considered objectionable, not by any government or official group,
Okay.
but by the invisible hand of the market, as seen through these algorithms and AI systems.
Which brings us back to that big question we talked about before. Is any of this actually bad? Or are we just seeing how a globalized culture evolves, where certain values, certain ways of expressing ourselves just naturally become more dominant?
It's complicated, and the PDF even says there are no simple answers. The important thing is that we have these conversations, that we don't shy away from the tough questions about power, about influence, and about the subtle ways our digital lives are being shaped.
It's true. Because whether we realize it or not, those algorithms that seem so harmless, those lines of code designed to make our online experiences more personal, they have the power to either amplify or silence entire cultures, entire ways of seeing the world.
It's like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
The decisions we make now about technology, about regulation, about the very nature of online conversation will have huge and lasting impacts.
So what can we even do? Are we just along for the ride? Or is there a way to navigate this digital world more consciously, more critically?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The PDF doesn't offer any easy answers, but it does leave us with this powerful message: to be aware, to be involved, and to recognize that the future of our digital world isn't set in stone. It's something we actively create through our choices, our voices, and our demands for better representation, more diversity, and a digital space that truly reflects how rich and complex human experience really is.
That's a powerful thought to end on. And a huge thank you to all of you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive into the intricate world of American cultural influence in our digital age. It's a conversation that's far from over, and we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, keep asking those difficult questions, and most importantly, keep your minds open to the vast array of perspectives that make up our increasingly interconnected world. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.